That was wonderful and
Thank you.
inspiring. And I agree with you that we're headed toward a better place. I think the world's going to be different after this
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be different in good ways.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the lessons that you taught is the importance of words because they make you think in different ways. I think this comparison of diversity versus inclusion or equality versus equity, those are actually really important lessons and make one think. So I had a question that, since I'm the MC here, I get to ask the first question. So to some level, and of course this is not always true, but schools provide a sort of an equalizing place for kids to learn, and we don't have those right now. And I think for STEM education, especially, and I'm sure you'll agree, I was a chemistry major also.
Oh, nice.
But chemistry is a hands-on, smelly subject when you get deep into it. But STEM education, I think, is as much hands-on as it is, knowing your math and other things like that. So do you know of good solutions that are happening out there right now on the kind of we're all going to do remote learning, at least here on the West Coast for the next several months. How are people thinking about this?
Well, it's a great question. And I think it is very challenging given the environment. And as you said, we're living in a time where the pandemic is making sort of existing disparities more apparent and more obvious. So, you're assuming that people even have access to Wi-Fi, computers, and so there are people who are not even able to avail themselves of virtual resources. That's number one. And so I think it is a challenge because, as you said, schools provide, it's more than just a learning space. Kids get meals at school. There are so many other services that are also rendered by schools. So I think first and foremost, it's very challenging given the time. And I know there are lots of people trying to think very thoughtfully and including the science into deciding how to open, when to open, how to do so safely. There was a report by the academies, national academies, that came out that was saying to prioritize, so I think K-5 first because of the developmental stage, et cetera. But it's still, there's so many unknowns in terms of how to do that safely. So to your question about what are people doing, I know there's a group, I actually took part in a virtual symposium a few months ago by the USA Science and Engineering Fest. And I know that they have been doing such great work to provide virtual activities for kids where the event I took part in, there were NASA scientists or engineers that were speaking. There was this really great range of speakers that were talking on a number of different topics. So I think there are groups that are trying to leverage the fact that we are all, for the most part, hunkered down at home and trying to provide virtual experiences that can keep. And really, honestly, I think this is also just as important as the more kind of, like you said, learning how to do math and science, but it's making the connection to your world. How do we, because I think part of the issue with STEM is how it's marketed. We just tell kids, go and pursue a STEM degree. But if you think about anyone, and if you ask anyone how they got interested in it, usually it wasn't just based on a blanket subject. It was, as in my case, I had something happen to me, so I got interested in it. So people usually either have a problem that they got interested in, or something that they connected to that they then sort of reverse engineer back to a particular subject. So I think one of the opportunities right now is to find ways to help kids relate and identify with STEM, which maybe doesn't even require a computer. Go outside. Go outside and be in nature and look at the leaves. And we're approaching fall. And why are the leaves turning colors? And what happens? There's condensation, the temperature drop. Now there's condensation on the window. I think it's so important to be, I think that's where the fun is when you introduce science and STEM to kids, and that it's all around them. And there's so many important questions that you can just ask about your environment and about the world to confer that curiosity and that delight in that ability to start thinking critically, that I think is a foundational element it's important to help students persist as they go through their subjects, which can feel abstract and maybe not so inspiring and exciting at times. So with all that being said, I think the opportunity for right now is to be as simple and to find STEM in the simplest of things, and to be inspired and try to be inspired and instill that inspiration, because I think that is the piece that's sometimes missing when you just assume that the classroom is going to do it all, and that there's none of this sort of informal learning that's necessary, when in fact I think the opposite is true. You do have to have the basics and confer the skill sets, but you also have to make the connection and inspire the curiosity and the inspiration through the more sort of informal learnings as well. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, and I think there might be some others that are popping up, but I think be creative, but also recognize that, again, as I said in my closing remarks, be kind to yourself in the midst of it. And I think focusing on taking care of yourselves and trying to find joy and peace and just being okay, and then finding those moments to focus on STEM and other things is just as important. So I think give yourself grace and space, and then be as creative as you can, because STEM is all around us. And I think it's exciting to try to explore and find it in your environment.
I think that's exactly right. So I'm going to now go to some of the questions from the audience. So this one's from Kanmulia Onianwa. I'll read it for those of the audience out there. As a young Black woman who wants to go into STEM, this was extremely inspiring. What would you say would be the biggest advice for future references when I am in a professional setting where not many people look like me and I feel like I shouldn't be there?
Well, first, thank you so much for that question and for the kind word you shared. And I'm excited for you already. I don't know you. You have a beautiful name that I wish I could have remembered exactly how Jim pronounced it so beautifully. But I think my advice, I'll go back to that point that I mentioned when I was wrapping up my PhD program, was first I had to stop comparing myself to other people. I was looking at other students and feeling like, well, they're publishing already and I haven't published. So first and foremost, do yourself a disservice and don't compare yourself. Do yourself a service by not comparing yourself to other people and only focusing on your own personal progress. That's number one. Number two, I would say own your voice. Even if it feels uncomfortable, if you are in these spaces, and once again, you might be among the few or the only, that's a sign that it's so critical and so important for you to be there. So never feel like you have to silence yourself. And quite frankly, I think push yourself to be vocal and to share your voice more, because it just is so important for you to know that your perspective matters, you matter, and your perspective matters. And I'll also say, don't be afraid to challenge yourself, because I think sometimes if you are feeling a little insecure or uncertain because of factors in your environment, maybe you have colleagues that are saying things to you that are microaggressions. These are things I experience to this day, quite frankly. But I have to often remind myself that I can challenge myself, and proceeding through fear and uncertainty, I come out on the other side and I've grown in some way. I've developed a new skill. I've overcome, or I'm conquering. Like, fear has less power to control me the more I face it head on and pursue things. So I'll just say, with all of that, again, don't compare yourself to other people. Don't be afraid to challenge yourself. Own your voice. You matter. Your voice matters. And just know that any space that you wind up in, you belong there, and own it. So I hope that's helpful. But yes, thank you so much for that wonderful question. And I'll try to be a little more succinct, because I know I'm going kind of long with my answers.
Oh, it's fine. So I'm going to paraphrase a question from Jenny, because it goes to something I've been thinking about as well. So a theme you stressed is that there's no one size fits all. I think, from everything from personalized medicine to how we learn to everybody has a place that is unique to their skill set, and it turns out that's actually what makes for a rich world and what makes for amazing inventions and entrepreneurship and great new science, etc. So with that having been said, there's still a pretty high reliance, which I think it's going away. I'm so happy to see that going away, on standardized testing.
Mm-hmm.
I have never been I was a professor at Caltech for 15 years. I never liked standardized testing. I didn't think it actually taught you much at all about the student. And I guess you agree with me.
Oh, I have a funny story about standardized testing and how much it doesn't give you an indication. So one of the things that I didn't mention was because I was in already a 5-year program, I had to take the GRE basically just to be able to officially proceed to my 5th year. And so I didn't really because I knew I wasn't trying to get a score to, be competitive, so to speak. I just took it. And I'll be honest, my score, I did well in quantitative, but my sort of written English, you would think I didn't speak English the way, my score was so low. It was very bad. And so when I decided, and another thing I sort of left out in my story, I wasn't totally sure if I was going to go to grad school right away, because as I mentioned or alluded to, I was feeling burned out from that 5th year. And quite frankly, I hadn't had a great mentoring experience. I wasn't sure if a PhD was for me, but I always feel like there are little angels in the forms of great professors or teachers that kind of come in at critical points. When I was not going to apply for graduate school, the department chair, Dr. Mark Mitchell, I was telling him, I'm like, Dr. Mitchell, I'm done with school. I can't do it anymore. And he's like, Knatokie, you're such a good student. It would be a shame to not at least give yourself the option of going. So this was in November, and applications were due in a month. So I didn't have time to apply and to redo the GRE. And I only applied to 3 schools, and Harvard was a why not. I actually didn't assume or think I would get in. And so all that being said, I had to submit those GRE scores, including the one where you would think I didn't even know how to speak English. But Harvard saw past that and other things, and I was able to be admitted. So all that being said, I think I'm a poster child for I don't really think you can learn much about a young person and their potential based on a standardized test, because as you said, we're all so different. We learn differently. There have also been reports about the cultural and not being sort of culturally relevant, and how this is influencing students' participation in these tests. So I am certainly not a fan of them, and I'm kind of a poster child for I don't think they are predictors for your ability to succeed and to excel.
So what do you think is I think it's an easy out to just go by test scores, and that it's sort of a lazy out, actually. When I did graduate admissions for chemistry at Caltech for several years, and I always looked at letters. I thought letters were actually really, really informative. Do you think, how else if you were in charge of admissions, wherever it is, I don't know, it could be admissions into chemistry in 6th grade. Kids want it, and you got, what do you?
I agree.
Just let everybody in.
I think as much as you can infer, as you said, from the letters to the personal statements that people submit, yeah. I'm a firm believer in, there's one thing you can train anyone in a skill, but one thing you cannot train is passion. And if I have a sense that you are passionate about something, I feel like I can be confident that you will, if you don't know something, you'll take the time to learn it because your passion is driving you into that area. And I've seen this, when I was in the White House, I had this fantastic intern, Osa Remnant Okolo is her name. Shout out to her. And she's an undergraduate student at the time. And she was fantastic because she was so driven and so motivated and so passionate that literally there was a large event that we were doing, and I was so stretched thin that I trusted this young woman. This is a White House event. And I had to trust her. And that's the combination too. You see the passion, you see the commitment, but then there's also the confidence building for her to know that I am trusting you with something that's very important. So it goes both ways. So I think, yes, if I had to be the one, and however we could get at that passion, that drive, I think to me, that is one of the biggest indicators for someone's potential to do well. If they feel driven by something other than just getting a good grade, there's something bigger that's compelling them to do it and to go into space. So in my humble opinion, I think passion is so important because you can't train it, you can't teach it. It's you have it, or something inspires it in you, but you can't force a person to be passionate about something.
Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you. Here's someone who wants some inspiration from you. I guess you've been inspirational enough. They just want to keep on going. So, if you could speak directly to young people in the community, what message do you have for them to think about or act on over summer break or the new school year? This individuals point out that there are a number of students here tonight. There's also a lot of parents and educators here to pass on. So either to the educators and the parents or to the students. What's your message?
What is my message? Well, first, once again, you are a very, especially this, I'll first speak to my students. You are such a special generation for what you are enduring in the midst of trying to get your education. And so just first know how special you are to have to be in this space and to, again, as I was saying earlier, to be navigating living through a pandemic and trying to learn online and all these other things. But I would also say to you that even in uncertainty, there is still opportunity. And I think that the challenge for you all is to always try to find, and I may have mentioned this earlier, is the collateral beauty. This is a very difficult and a challenging time, but I do believe that there are some positive things that are occurring. So I would challenge you to, again, try to find the collateral beauty in different ways, but then also see the opportunity. Again, we're living through this time that none of us has ever experienced. So how do you see yourself? Do you have an idea? Like, what is your perception? Because I think all of us have something. We have a unique idea. We have a unique skill set. We have unique gifts that we can use in service of society. Our task is to figure out what those are and to find the combination, the nexus of them all. I'll be honest with you, I'll be very transparent and say it's been hard for me emotionally, psychologically, dealing with the pandemic and trying to strike this balance between being okay and then somehow being excellent. But I will tell you this, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying about passion. The times where I feel most okay and even happy and joy is when I'm doing actually what I'm doing now, because it feels like I am connected to both my purpose and my passion, and then something that I feel like I'm good at. And so I would encourage you to use this time. And actually, this is a lifelong endeavor, in my humble opinion, is to find that nexus. What are you passionate about? What are you, what's your purpose? Like, what's going to drive you? And then where are you developing skills that have made you excellent? Or do you have an area where you want to be more excellent? So I think the opportunity of this time is that because we are all forced to slow down and to sit down, I think it's a time for reflection that we may not always have because we're always just go, go, go. So I think I would encourage you all to use this time and to try to find and try your hardest, but it's possible. Try to find a way to make there be something positive that comes out of this experience. And only you know what that is. It's not the same for everyone, but I think it's a great challenge for us all. And frankly, I think it's a great survival mechanism, because if you let yourself focus on the sadness and the mire and the muck, so to speak, it'll pull you down. And so I think, so with all that being said, I just challenge you all to know that I can even say personally, I never knew how strong I was until I was challenged to a great deal. And I think this is what this time is showing us. We don't even know the strength that we possess until, as they say with the tea bag, you don't know what's in it until it's in hot water. Well, the world is in a cup of hot water right now. And things are coming out of us. And so I would encourage you to use this time to get to know yourself better, to explore your passions, explore your interests, and no experience is wasted, because everything is a learning opportunity. Either you learn yes, I want more of this, go in this direction, or no, this might not be for me. Maybe I should pivot. But the one thing I think I haven't mentioned yet that is something I'm very committed to is this idea of no what ifs. Leave no what ifs on the table. If there is something that you want to do, find a way to do it, because I would rather regret doing something and failing, so to speak, versus regret wondering what if. My worst nightmare is to wake up, maybe I'll live to be 100. I don't know. Hopefully I'll live a long life and to be on my deathbed and have my life flash before my eyes. And I'm like, there was that one thing that I wish I had done. And I wonder how my life might be different. That is my worst nightmare. So I encourage you all, if nothing else, this time has shown us how we can't take things for granted. We can't take people for granted. Leave no what ifs on the table. And it's the same for parents. How do you want to love your kids more or differently, or pursue that career or make that pivot that you might have been considering but maybe didn't know how? And obviously I know we're in a very constrained time economically, but start planning. Start the plan and just take one step at a time is all that it takes. And so I think there are opportunities. We just have to find them and or create them. So I don't know if that's inspiring, but that's that's my two cents.
That's good. So one of the traits that I really treasure in people, and you see it a lot in the STEM field, but you see it in out of STEM fields. I mean, people that just have a natural curiosity. And, I can't think of a higher compliment than to describe someone as naturally curious. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, and that applies to, it doesn't really matter what age. And I wonder if you could maybe, what do you tell parents? Because this is I think it's almost the most important trait to encourage in a kid. Because then maybe you find out you don't want to do STEM. Maybe you find out you have a passion somewhere else, or you do STEM and you find out you're good at giving inspirational talks.
Right. Exactly. So this idea around curiosity. Well, I think we all have the potential to be curious. I think it's just a matter of whether it's encouraged in us. We can be curious, as you said, about anything. It could be about STEM, or it could be about how do you make a movie? How do you become a good writer and tell a good story and narrative literature? So I think one way, and this is actually a really good question I've never been asked before about this idea of curiosity and how do you nurture it. I think it's just because when you were in school and then teachers would try to tell you there's no such thing as a dumb question. I think if you just really believe that and like internalize it and then encourage it, because I think what holds people back with their curiosity sometimes is this fear of judgment about what they may be curious about. So I think if we can really internalize this idea that there really are, what do we say? The only silly question is the one that's not asked, right? And I think that's the mentality that we have to, because that's all curiosity is. It's asking questions and just wanting to have a better understanding. And so I think if we can just encourage everyone to constantly ask questions, because that's at the heart of curiosity. And we have to create spaces where people feel safe to be curious, because I think there is this idea, especially, the internet is not a nice place and there are trolls online sometimes. So I think there's so many factors that are actually trying to compete or kill curiosity sometimes, but we have to be more proactive in encouraging it. And it really just boils down to just being open and excited about asking questions and then exploring what the answers are.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think if someone asks you a question, it's okay to say I don't know, and but I'm going to help you. I'm gonna try to help you figure it out.
Exactly. Let's learn together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been a wonderful evening. Thank you so much, Knatokie. I'm going to go ask people some questions. And I
Yes,
hope
I'm
I
like,
get
what else
asked.
am I curious about? Well, thank you so much, Jim. Thank you so much to ISB, to Town Hall Seattle. This was a fantastic opportunity, and I'm so grateful to have been able to talk and to share with you all. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care. Bye, everybody.